Good morning. My name is Divya Mahajan, and I'm from Philips. I head the digital networks platform for, trying to find the clicker here, for Philips. And what I'm going to talk to you about is our journey towards SD-WAN. And let me start with describing what Philips is actually. So Philips is a company which believes in delivering innovation that matters to you. We are spread over about 100 countries, and we really believe in making the world healthier and more sustainable through innovation. Our target is to touch the lives of 3 billion people by 2030 with the innovations and the healthy living that we believe will make everyone's life better. In numbers, if you look at our Philips, we have about 18 billion in sales in 2018, and about 77,000 people spread all of this. And the reason this is kind of important for the SD-WAN message is you have a lot of people relying on your WAN across multiple countries. And we traditionally believed in one kind of a network, but our businesses were evolving very rapidly. If you look at what a business is looking at, okay, we strive to look at all the facets of customer needs, from healthy living all the way to prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and finally home care. That means the portfolio has evolved quite considerably into focusing on well-being and healthcare needs. And the main areas you have is focused on personal health. Okay, that's to the right. Then you have connected care, which deals with people in hospitals and how do you monitor them effectively in the hospital, but outside the hospital as well. Again, think about the fact that these hospitals have these smart devices. You need to service them. You need to put a software, et cetera, to them. So you start seeing a shift from just selling boxes into solutions which span software, networks, hardware. And that's the digital transformation that Philips has been on for a while. Finally, you have diagnostic and treatments. This is the high-end equipment for using X-ray, et cetera. So when you have an organization which is rapidly evolving into digital, what do you need? Well, we need to start rethinking the network. We need to start thinking of what are the new use cases that Philips has, its users have, that can get you to the productivity that you need as well. So when I stepped into this role, my background is not traditional infrastructure. I'm not a network guy. I don't think of myself as a network guy. I actually came from architecture. I came from IT architecture, the enterprise architect. In 2008, I set up the first Philips account for cloud because we believed cloud was the way the future was going to evolve. So when I came back and was talking to my CEO, he said, the benefits we've got from cloud in terms of scaling up people, one person managing 15 servers, now scaling up to 1,000 servers, can that productivity be done in networking? And that was a challenge he put to me. He said, how can you provide Philips a digital network, okay, that will scale up? Can we bring the software-defined benefits we've seen in cloud to Philips in networking as well? And in 2016, I started looking around. There's not much there. 2017, when I took on this role, okay, you had these whispers of SDN concepts and data center leaking into the WAN, leaking into the LAN. And that provided an opportunity for Philips. We said, okay, if we start now, we might be able to pull this transformation for Philips in the networks domain as well. So what was our key drivers up here? Our drivers were, we see an exponential growth in network capacity, usage, et cetera. That means your backbone network has to keep on increasing its capacity. With MPLS, that tends to be a bit expensive. And I think most people in this room probably have the same problem. Your budgets don't go up, they typically go down. So how do you manage increased capacity within same or lower budgets? And that's the real challenge up here. Second is, if you want to do increasing budgets, you need to do something about your MPLS networks. What do you want to do about them? So the solution has to cover that problem as well. It also has to look at your shift, and you saw that in the survey, IaaS vendors, cloud platforms. Okay, how do you get that traffic integrated into your WAN in a holistic way? And lastly, the benefits of scaling up with automation, with software-defined technologies and cloud. Okay, that was the last. Central policy management, where a few people can direct your entire network rather than relying on a much larger team. Teams have shrunk, taking benefit of the optimizations and automation, and we need to see how this can continue as well. So this got us in a look into 5 facets of our strategy for the network. And they underpinned with SD-WAN, about taking enterprise services on the WAN using SDN principles. Its next one is SD-LAN, which is taking the same concepts and bringing them into the LAN infrastructure. How do you automate? How do you have centralized policy, etc.? We introduced PNX, which was interesting in the poll before this, where people are saying, how do you connect? What we noticed that the ingress and egress costs, meant that if you wanted to have a virtualized data center where you're not dependent on one IaaS provider, you want to have 2 or 3 seamlessly working together with each other, you needed a much more stronger concept than just internet links one after each other. So we settled on using co-location providers and providing our own infrastructure up there to try and knit these together into a virtual data center, which means now we have a presence in the colo centers where we can start integrating with third parties, IaaS vendors, etc. A lot of flexibility up there as well. Again, SD-WAN has to be there. And why does SD-WAN have to be here? Very simply, and you're going to see that on the next slide, but let me get to that. Remote access VPN, I think, and UC was another part of our digital transformation. We want to say people don't have to be chained to their desks. They should be able to work from wherever they need to be, whenever, and securely. And the secure part is actually I think, a major driver in SD-WAN as well as SD-LAN, because it's a lot easier to secure rather than trying to retrofit onto an existing legacy network. So what was our evolution like? Okay, we read a lot of white papers, and if you were in 2016, 2017, you would remember this was on its growth curve with the hype. Okay, MPLS could do a lot of stuff. And we tried to skim it down to what we thought we might achieve from all the hype that we're reading. So numbers are there. You have a cost reduction expectation of 45%. By the way, don't show this to your CIO. Sometimes it can set the bar really high. Next one is 80% the latency reduction. We said, wow, that's really great. This AR stuff is going to do magic for us. 200% bandwidth. That was actually we needed to do that anyway. But we said, if we can try and get these 3 things done with SD-WAN, we are starting walking on water. Where was the network at that point in time? So Philips has gone through an evolution. We started with the MPLS secured network, private network, like most of us around here. We evolved with internet connections, getting internets for first offloading traffic, and then saying, let's use IPsec VPNs to just manage the entire network. IPsec VPNs were not scaling up for us. You had a hub and spoke, increased latency, and automation was just quite difficult to kind of sustain. So SD-WAN came in right time, saying we can do all this magic for you from a single pane of glass. Good. So we evolved to using SD-WAN with MPLS, with IPsec as well. Now someone might say that this makes this picture look more complicated. Yeah, you're right. It does. You need to have cross connects between SD-WAN and your legacy networks as well. But it's a reality as well. Okay, you need MPLS for certain use cases. You need IPsec for places where the government does not allow encryption. We are in over 100 countries. Not all of them are very friendly to encryption and having encrypted traffic, etc. So this poses realistic challenges that we had to face in our journey as well. So the business case for this boiled down to our CIO actually saw that case and he said, I want you to do better than 45%. So that's why I said, don't show the numbers to him. Okay, that'll make your life a lot more difficult. Now, actually, I'm quite happy to say that, so when we started Journey 2017, we actually achieved these targets. So we are on track in 2019 for the cost reductions that you see up here. Okay, this is not rocket science. You can achieve it. Okay, and we have. What was the target? We want to integrate solution, replacing MPLS, switching it with an overlay network over the internet. Okay, and that's the interesting part. Your business case and your ability to deliver your business case relies on your access mix. If you have a lot of MPLS floating around, you guys might do even better than 50%. It's all in what is your access mix. If you have a lot of internet, I think your business case is going to reduce to switching one router from whoever's providing right now to another CPE technology. And then your business case might not be that hot. Okay, so focus on what your access is and optimizing your access to really achieve the business case up here. The next one is pure service. Okay, we didn't want to invest in hardware. SD-WAN is a toddler. It's maturing rapidly, but it's a toddler right now. So we wanted to go into full service mode. And we wanted a service provider to do it for us, again, for the same reasons. The key assumptions we had is we'll be able to replace MPLS, and we'll be able to replace them with internet connections using ISPs instead. Finally, technology should be able to scale up so that we can deliver the complex network scenarios that we also need for sites. Again, I think that's one of the learnings that we actually found in retrospect. So who did we choose? We chose BT with their Agile Connect platform, okay, and they're using the Nokia Nuage technology. And I think BT, some people from BT and also from Nuage are in the room. So thank you, gentlemen, for helping us on this transformation journey. Okay. So let's focus now on the lessons learned, which is probably what you guys are really here for. We were one of the pioneers into getting into this SD-WAN, okay, and I think we are also very risk-friendly. We are willing to co-innovate and take a journey together on things which are not proven yet. Not everyone has that appetite. So match that to your culture to see if you can do that. Next, you need an attitude in a team. Okay, but let's talk about the business case. As I said earlier, it depends a lot on the access mix, and your leverage on transformation ability would depend a lot on how quickly you can replace your MPLS lines with internet lines. A learning which we had in the internet lines was also about quality of internet lines. Once you put an SD-WAN on top of your internet, it hides completely the underlay. So if you have an ISP which peers in Bogota to go from Boston to New York, your latency is going to be very high. Your SD-WAN is just going to show a single hop. This drives traditional networking people insane. They said, how can one hop suddenly go from 3 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds? So the quality of your underlay becomes pretty critical. And today, there are very few people who can provide you an IP SLA on internet circuits. But yet, if you really want your SD-WAN to shine and reduce that latency to 80% or less, you need to start looking at your ISP, your peerings, and how do they manage it? Can they give you a latency statistic, and that can you hold them to an SLA? Can they monitor it? Okay, can tools like some of the vendors which you see up here monitor this continuously? You need to get into that. This was a problem you did not have in MPLS. It was hidden away from you. But when you step into this world, that's something you need to take into consideration. So that's actually why we need to keep MPLS around. We have some cases where I can't have unreliable or unpredictable, not even unreliable, performance. So video, call center VoIP, okay, and regulated countries tend to be where we still have pockets of MPLS floating around. But compared to what we had earlier, it's a fraction. A lot of your data doesn't need to go anymore over MPLS or even over your private network. Okay, you can break out locally. So that really helped us quite a bit. Transform first and prioritize stability. Now, if you really want all these benefits that you're hearing, you need to make sure that you transform your sites as rapidly as possible. Because the more sites that are in the SD-WAN, that means the more you can use your AAR and your traffic tuning and shaping, etc., to innovate in your network. But to get there, you need to ensure you have a stable network first. And that is the real challenge with SD-WAN. How do you get from where I am today, with a complex, usually undocumented or poorly documented network, into this SD-WAN where everything has to be rigidly put in the portal? That's the challenge that you're going to face in your transformation. That's what we faced as well. So we have over 300 sites, and we have about 160 sites transformed yet. Okay, so we are about halfway into the journey. Right now, we've done most of the basic sites, and then we're going to the more complex sites right now. So data centers, how do you transform them? Change in your organization is the impact of that as well. Okay, when you go to your team might be very used to being able to tweak the network. Guys used to Cisco, okay, he jumps into CLI, he can quickly tweak a few things and get done with it. That doesn't scale well when you go into SD-WAN. Why? Your only view into the network is a web page or a web portal. And that requires quite a readjustment. I had more challenges dealing with people with the traditional view saying, yeah, but I used to see this in Netmon, or I used to see that, or I could do this, and now I can't do that. But that is what's actually stopping you from scaling up. You need to have one way of working, and you have to have this automated as well. And if you can get your team to cross that barrier, to rely and trust the portal, then I think you've won a major part of your battle as well. SD-WAN technology itself is a learning that we found. I think SD-WAN is maturing fast, but not fast enough. Its origins in data center and SDN meant they covered a lot of cases well, okay, which covered the kind of things you'd expect in a standard site. So if you find your sites are very homogeneous, very rapid, like you've got a lot of stores around that you want to deploy to, you're going to find SD-WAN a breeze. It's going to be very easy, very quick, and you'll get all the benefits that you hear in the slides. When you come into an enterprise, it changes a bit. Why? Because there's this one DHCP sitting there which no one knew about, and now you need to tweak it on the fly. So, or you have an active setup, and you're trying to balance it across 2 weak links and one ISP. So when you start getting into these nuances about how your network is set up, which works well with the traditional router setup that you have. It's been working for 2 or 3 years, no problems. But when you get into SD-WAN, you have to start really thinking differently about them. And performance is something that SD-WAN is still not quite there yet. When you start looking at the higher performance, the 1 GB, the 10 GBs, etc., ask for performance numbers with multiple overlays, with security fully turned on, with all the features like DPI, AAR, etc., turned on. And the numbers you see in raw throughput for SD-WAN drop significantly. Okay, this is not surprising. When IPsec started up, you saw similar complaints even there. But I just want you guys to be realistic on that one. Okay, how far can you push SD-WAN? And that's why I meant the advanced features may not scale up for you. It might be fine for you to do like 2 or 3 sites, but might not scale up further than that. Now this is changing very rapidly, and SD-WAN is software. That's very, very important to remember because it bites you. How does it bite you? Well, when Cisco released an iOS patch, it didn't have to impact the whole network. I could select router by router by router by router and do it my own pace. And sometimes, you just forgot 1 or 2 routers and your security guys came and beat you on the head to update it. Whereas it was quite manageable. When you look in SD-WAN, if your central controller has a software update, it mediates an update to all your devices as well. So it kind of forces you to rethink how you're going to handle software updates in an area which was never used to thinking of software. But that's also got the benefit of rapid evolution. You're going to see new and newer technology and features coming rapidly into SD-WAN, which is at a pace far faster than your traditional network. And you can deploy them at the push of the button. So you have an opportunity coming to you, but you also have a bit of a challenge up there. And I think dealing with rapid evolution and technology which is maturing quickly means that if you want to do it yourselves internally, you're going to have to hire some pretty good people and be able to retain them. Okay, and we looked at our challenges. You saw we have 5 already out there. And we said, look, we want to delegate some of these challenges to a service provider because having close contact with the technology provider. So I don't want the service provider only, I want the technology vendor also in the room with them. So when you have a problem, you have the best brains together. And that leverage you don't get if you're trying to do it yourself. Lastly, I want to touch about zero-touch provisioning because that's the holy grail we were hearing in 2017. That ZTP, you just send it in mail and ask the janitor to plug it in and your network is transformed. Okay, how many guys actually still believe that? Could I have a raise of hands here? Excellent. I like your optimism. I need to hire you.
I've actually spoken to about 50 companies who do exactly that, some SD-WAN vendors.
The challenges we found was that, yes, ZTP does work. However, transforming a site is not about spinning up a router. Transforming a site requires you to check all the use cases that the network is working as you expected before you put the device in. So you have an existing router, you unplug the ISP, you put in the SD-WAN router, 15 minutes later or maybe half an hour later depending on ISP's link, okay, the router's up and running, great, it's done. The next 2 or 3 hours is a run book. You guys need to ensure you have a good run book. Otherwise, you're going to visit that site 4 or 5 times, and any benefits you get from ZTP is lost because you have to visit and retouch the site 3 or 4 times. So coming back to service providers, what we learned is co-innovation and risk sharing is key. And getting the technology vendor also to be part of the table is important. And I think this is going to be difficult to scale as more and more people come to SD-WAN. Hopefully the technology is matured and you don't need the technology, the R&D guys, et cetera, there. But nevertheless, it's good to keep in mind. The portal is your only view to the network. That is the most difficult one. You cannot log into these routers anymore. They're all headless chickens. Seriously. I mean, you can plug them out. As you said, janitor can plug it in and it should start working. So the logic and the tweaking that you have locally is gone, which is a good thing because I've got a smaller team who needs to manage a bigger footprint. So it's good, but the flip side is the change management, which you talked about. You need to start trusting what you see in the data. And you need to challenge the data. As you're making the transition over into SD-WAN, compare your traditional network, what was the traffic to the site before, get that telemetry after, and keep the old link alive, at least for 2 or 3 weeks, because we found within the first 2 or 3 weeks, you should be able to see any of the problems which come up. After that, they just run stably and you can forget about them. So traditional WAN monitoring breaks. Okay, a lot of things and idioms people had, this doesn't work. When you have the underlay hidden by the overlay, you have a different way of understanding what the network problems are going to be. BGP issues between SD-WAN and traditional networks is also going to come and bite you. Okay, so try and keep a close eye on those ones because it's usually not the SD-WAN network which will fail. It's usually the translation between SD-WAN and the traditional network because both have assumptions on both sides, which stops working and then you have panic on your hands. Oh, it's only this link. Fix it. Network's back up and running. But it gives you a bit of heart attacks, when you're running the network and everyone says, SD-WAN failed again. No, it didn't, but never mind. We have to fix it anyway. Software bits, I talked about that before. And again, keep in mind and start thinking about the future of when do you want to do your software updates. I'd actually recommend you just block every maintenance window. You have a software patch update, etc. done. I think the challenge is when you are not managing your own infrastructure, your service provider is determining your patch updates. So if you can negotiate with them what the maintenance windows are, okay, so it doesn't disrupt you, I think that's a plus. The other part which I've seen useful is that you don't have to do it all at once. Do a red-green. Okay, I'm not sure that's a cloud terminology, but it's saying that, okay, switch. Do it in small patches or small groups. So you don't have to have the whole network at risk. There's some very scary updates which happen, your controllers, but I think the technology is matured enough that major changes to the controllers now no longer have an impact to the individual sites. But there is a small risk that you have to keep in the back of your mind. There could be a breaking change which should have been caught, but if it doesn't, you could have a network which is completely down. That was the nightmare we kept on having every time we had a software update. Luckily, it's never happened. So finally, I just want to kind of wrap up where we are right now. So our focus is really on stability. We want to ensure we have a good replacement for our existing WAN infrastructure. And then we want to start saying, what can we do next with it? I would really focus on not introducing any SD-WAN optimizations too early. If you have too few sites, it doesn't help. You don't see the benefits really. If you have too few links, it doesn't help. The other one is about link quality. As I said earlier, you need to measure the latency up there. Also, keep in mind that your SD-WAN is a lot more sensitive to the ISP quality, okay, than traditional networks are. And we don't know what the cause of that is, but that's something we noticed, and we're trying to figure it out right now. The last point is kind of where I'd like to go personally. I'm a strong believer in data. I'm a strong believer that a team which is smaller can be a lot more effective if the hard work of deciphering all the data that's gathered in the SD-WAN can be translated into insight. We see that a lot in ISD LAN products area, okay, where it gives you intelligent insight. But what's what we're really not doing is when you start looking at Fluke, et cetera, and all these low-level monitoring, you don't get the bigger picture of what you want to transform in your site, okay? You have to start rethinking your network as data islands instead. Where is your data located? Where are your applications located? Where is your file shares located? And then start looking at what's the expected latency between these silos of data. Can we move the data island? Or do we need to improve the network? And those kind of insights you cannot do unless you have really automated data collection, which is possible with SD-WAN. With that, I'd like to kind of conclude my talk. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you.
Any questions from the floor? We have a mic, or you can slide out. Oh, we have a few up there.
As I said earlier, the first question, why did you choose a managed solution instead of do it yourself? We chose a managed solution because we didn't want to invest in having all the hardware when the technology was very new. It's not reached the evolution end yet. So this was something we felt is going to evolve very much. Secondly, it's a question of skills. Okay, you need to have someone who's almost all the time updating themselves with SD-WAN technology, and that distracts from the ability to be able to scale up your migration. When you have for a few sites or very cookie-cutter sites, you could probably do this yourself. But in our case, we needed someone to really break the complex questions. Yeah, the first one. The cost savings are based on MPLS to SD-WAN. If you look at your cost savings breakdown, okay, a lot of that is about access. Remember, I had the challenge of increasing my bandwidth to 100%. Okay, so a lot of that is the MPLS cost decrease, but part of that is also the CPE changes between what SD-WAN and the traditional networking does. Internet sourcing is multiple. Okay, we are open for everything. No, we were not concerned about agility when we chose a managed provider. Again, what we looked in a provider was co-innovation. We wanted them, as well as the technology provider, to convince us they will evolve as rapidly as we want. We expected SD-WAN to be less. This is too fast. Okay, sorry. So we expected SD-WAN to not have some of the corner cases that we needed, and we expected them to develop it for us. So we actually expected agility to increase rather than decrease with the managed provider. Yes, my DCs are SD-WAN enabled. Not all of them. Okay, our cloud connectors, which connect from the Philips network into the IS providers through the PNXs, they are SD-WAN enabled. Also, our traditional data centers, which we have, I won't mention the provider name. Okay, four of them actually have SD-WAN currently. Plans for DevOps. DevOps is kind of interesting because when you have a managed service provider, DevOps is not inside my scope. Okay, it's outside. So I need to actually work more in an agile way of working with what are the next features we want to expect from a platform and how they're going to get done in this. Now, internally we do DevOps, but it's more in the other domains other than SD-WAN today. Okay, do you want to go back or that's it? Okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.